New digital technologies are driving a step change in enterprise business transformation. At the Digital Twin Podcast, we explore the intersection of technology and business. What should your digital twin look like? Welcome back. Today's episode is about digital leadership. There's been a lot of changes over the years in terms of digital leadership in enterprises. If you think about who was leading that digital side of the business, it was usually a CIO. And the CIO's responsibility mostly centered around the infrastructure, what was hosting all the applications, making sure there's uptime, making sure that they're selecting the right type of software, and you're traveling the right path in terms of the technologies you pick, whether that's hardware or software. But really, a lot of it was around building the right infrastructure for the enterprise.
Yeah, I think, there's a couple of things there around that, right? The roles are evolving, but
Yeah.
they're becoming more um, fragmented as well. If you look at across different industries and across different disciplines, really in general, you could almost have digital leadership in different parts of the business. I mean, from a legal standpoint, from a operational standpoint, from you name it. I mean, and it's taken a very unique fragmented approach, but all kind of coming together with an overall strategy, right? That infrastructure or the enterprises should really have, right? And a lot of it's centered around the current infrastructure typically, and they're trying to build off of what they've already invested in, right? And can we leverage what we have to build more digital transformational technologies on it? And you'll see this more and more with a lot of the infrastructure players trying to offer more and more of that type of technology, whether it's ML, AI. A lot of the data science teams are also part of this digital leadership as well, right? A lot of people say that they are the lifeblood of the digital culture,
Yeah.
right? Without them, they're really driving the behavior and the culture change here, right? So
Yeah.
the strategy is a big piece. I mean, I think you can focus on infrastructure and then work your way to technologies, or you can focus on areas that need it
Yeah.
now and work your way on what that looks like. I
The
mean, that's
change, the change that I see is that some organizations still continue to maintain that CIO role, and they're given that responsibility, additional responsibility of helping define that strategy for the organization. Because really, digital leadership today means building the right organizational strategy that would help you become more competitive in the marketplace, become more digitally native. We've used that word before, right?
yeah.
So to me, that's more of a front end strategy, forward looking strategy, versus the support role that they've always taken on, where they have been responsible for making sure everything works okay, right? And I also see organizations where they are creating new roles that work side by side with the CIO, whether that's a VP of digital or a digital chief digital officer or chief data officer. So there seems to be very, like you said, fragmented approach to handling the digital leadership and responsibilities, but strategy and adding strategy to their role is probably the biggest shift that we have seen.
Yeah, I mean, what I sometimes think is this a Sigma 2.0? Are we doing a continuous improvement 2.0 here? What are we
Yeah.
really saying anything different? You know, when you talk about these continuous improvement programs, they're looking at data and trying to find anomalies and trying to find data-driven answers to decisions that need to be made within organizations. To your point, be more competitive. Um, if you start looking at the digitization and the digital transformation that these companies are going through, you see some very similar paths being taken here,
Yeah.
um, but in a new way with technology kind of enhancing the the data gathering capabilities, the data analytics of this,
Yeah.
and much more in a real time basis, to be able to make decisions much quicker for organizations, become more adaptable. So, in a way, I kind of see a progression or an evolution of that, married with some new technologies that are really trying to infiltrate the way we do business. So
Yeah.
which is quite interesting. So that's why vision, when we talk about one of the things about having a clear vision of where you want this to go. I mean, most big organizations had these continuous improvement programs that were instituted, and they had the vision and strategy to kind of move that forward. Very similar to this, right? I mean,
Hmm.
how are you going to go from where you are today to where you want to go a year from now, 2 years from now? And is it possible with your current organization, right? So these are some of the questions internally when we talk about digital leadership and some of the qualities around that fragmented team is how do you organize that to really bring that value.
Yeah. Great
And
point on the vision, right? You know, strategy and vision. Where are we going to be as an organization in the next 5 years and 10 years? And where are the digital technologies heading, right? Because the CIO, CDO might know the impact of technology to the industry and to the business more than most people. And so they have to tell the CEO or the rest of the organization what those technologies are going to have impact or change in their day-to-day operations, potentially disrupting their business. And if so, they need to be better prepared and proactively take actions that, that is visionary, right? That's the part that is visionary. How do you make a decision today that you are as a company better positioned for a better tomorrow?
yeah, and I think you're hitting those right on the core, right? I mean, I think there's a balance there, right? How far that digital vision looks to what you're really capable of doing today, and really marrying what you can do more in the short term, but build that foundation, as you say, what technologies are going to take you there to the next 5 to 10 years, and are we building for the future? Or are we building for now, right? So this is kind of the strategy and vision that companies are trying to take. They're trying to make bets on the right things so that they can build off of what they invest in, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we look at, and also, you know, how people are doing business today, right? When we talk about the pace of business, a lot of people are trying to invest in digital technologies that can give them value quick,
Yeah.
give them value over the long term. The patience and the pace that business has to see value is really a key component, right? I mean, you want to see some value pretty quickly, and that's across the board. We see a lot of that in the digital realm and digital transformation. People want to see some quick wins, and they want to see some value right away. And how do you balance that with not just building something that's for today just to show you that something is working, versus putting the foundation in for tomorrow and that
Yeah.
infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
So it's a balance. It's a balance, and we see that throughout the industries, and it's something to keep in mind, right? When we look at that.
I think the pace has changed partly because of digital, right? And so a digital leader should probably be in a better position to help guide that. I mean, and I think it's also tied to another key piece of the puzzle here, and that is the customer experience. If you look at companies like Amazon that have completely redefined the customer experience through digital, you now have a choice to make, right? You are able to change how you're perceived in the market through digital marketing, through digital tools, through digital experience. You're able to, in close to real time, be able to tell what a product is potentially evoking in terms of emotions. Are they feeling happy, good about it? Are they not feeling good about it? Whether
Mhm.
it's a shampoo or whether it's a car. I think Tesla, for example, is leading the way from a customer experience. My neighbor tells me that, He is excited about the fact that Tesla knows everything about his car, and that it uploads data on a daily, weekly basis back to Tesla, and then makes the recommendations specifically tailored to him or his model of the car. So how do you get close to the customer? How do you get the customer feedback in close to real time so you can provide your better experience, better products, better services, and better adapt yourself in the market? So to me, I mean, keeping up with that pace is just as important as providing the perfect or close to perfect customer experience that people have come
Yeah,
to expect.
I think that's very interesting there because when you talk about that experience, that customer experience, a lot of, industrial companies don't really have that connection with the customer.
Yeah, good point.
How do you build that bridge from that customer experience to the feedback that we're getting in a real-time basis to tie that back into your innovation, which is another key component in your strategy and how the digital leadership really completes that full feedback loop, right? If you're looking at new products, new services, what are we doing to enhance that customer experience ultimately to bring more value to the enterprise, right? So this ties right into that. And, innovation has been one of the things that, corporations and companies always have a challenging time trying to reinvent you know, the markets and really invigorate new innovation within. I mean, it's a the data proves it that it's not as easy as we think. But tying that customer experience, close experience with the customer that hasn't really been tied with innovation and product management can really
Yeah,
may accelerate different avenues for the business that has never been thought of or even explored in the past, right? I mean, so when you talk about adding enterprise value, I think that's one of the dots that can be really, closely interlinked and really tied into a much more engaging experience for the business and the customers. So I think it's an engine, right? It's that lifeblood, the innovation, right? So
so the innovation part of it is very intriguing. Like you said, everybody's trying to innovate. Organizations are trying to reinvent themselves to innovate, right? Can you pay your way through innovation? Can you actually make innovation happen if you throw a lot of money at it? It's an intriguing question. I don't know the answer to it, but many are doing it today, right? Does that happen somewhat naturally, somewhat organically? Does that, do you acquire or do you really develop that sort of mindset internally? I mean, I think again, this isn't really an argument or a conversation to have right now. Probably a great topic to discuss at some point, but it's intriguing to me that innovation, as it is framing a problem differently and then really solving that problem differently. I mean, maybe completely looking at a problem differently to be able to solve it, right? But can you pay your way through it? If you throw enough money at it, can we change attitude? Can we change, or do we just simply, shuffle through people until we get to it? You know, uh,
well, those are organizational um, decisions that have to be really assessed carefully, especially if you want to stay competitive in this space. And what better way to do that than tie customer experience right into your lifeblood of the engine, right? You'll know right away whether that link is working very well or not, and I think you'll know whether you need to acquire outside or keep going internally, right?
yeah,
So, but you'll know that, right? And that's the key, right? Having visibility and some barometer of how that is performing is key, right? So I think it's one area that most organizations say or want to do, but really never tie that or understand how to actually bring that together in a way that really makes an impact on the enterprise. And I think there's a lot of room there, and I think it's exciting. Um, but one of the things that when we talk about the innovation and the pace and how we tie that into overall customer experience, what we're really talking about here is really changing some of the ways of doing business in the past, right? So when you talk about that, you need to start thinking about, the adaptability factor and how you communicate this to your organization, right? There's a big component here that you know a lot of organizations that try to go down this transformational process seem to kind of bypass, just to kind of throw it in there. But
Yeah.
it's a very key component to really grease the wheels to accelerate the adaptability within the organization, because at the end of the day, organization really needs to embrace these technologies and these new data-driven mindsets to really create that engine or that innovation that makes the companies thrive into the future, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's key. I mean, the communication part of it is going to be a real big component in that too. I mean,
Yeah.
as you start to see both of that, I mean, adapting and communicating at the same time at a pace that needs to be, at one, with the organization as it starts to move, I think is another area that gets overlooked. So I think,
So, yeah, I think adaptability, to your point, is incredibly important. Change is constant, and if anything, regardless of whether or not you innovate successfully and you reinvent business models, if you don't adapt to change, and if you don't help your organization adapt to change, and get them in a mode of change, you're going to have, as an organization, a difficult time. How you adapt to change significantly relies on communication within the organization at many levels of the organization. And it really needs to come from the top, right? And it needs to be inspirational, right? It needs to be, why are we changing? What's the reason for the change? As Simon Sinek says, the why, right? The power of why. I think articulating that value of why are we changing, and why are we changing culturally, and why are we changing our mindset, I think it's going to be critical to helping the organization becoming more adaptable. I'm in total agreement with you there.
yeah, and I think, when we talk about communication, adaptability, you hit it right on the nail. It starts at the top, and really taking that a real key component in this is ownership, right? I mean, when you look at
Yeah.
the ownership and change management through the organization, it is what you just mentioned. It is that why, that belief, how to actually drive that change throughout the organization, and the key here is everybody takes cues from the top and takes cues through the organization. And as it permeates through the organization, people will start to see it in their everyday lives, that things are changing. And that ownership is quite important. And to really understand the magnitude of these transformations, we can't really address this enough, but understanding what technologies and digital tools are out there and how they're used to help organizations transform is a very key component in this. If you don't know what technology and tools and methodologies and frameworks that are out there to help the organization, that component in itself, you may miss opportunity and areas where you need to be building for the future. So it's important to stay up to date with technologies,
Yeah.
which is another key component, especially within our, one of the values that we're bringing into this podcast is really that digital literacy, right? It's really
Yeah.
helping um, C-level and digital transformation leaders out there understand what is available, what's possible, and how can I integrate this, and what value it brings to the organization.
Yeah.
So these are the other areas that are really critical that really drive transformation.
You mentioned a great point about digital literacy. I think one interesting aspect of that, especially when you tie that to specifically the market that we target, within the industrial, that's usually where our audience is going to be from, right? So within the industrial space, the digital adoption of digital tools and digital technologies are going to be key to attracting the next generation of workers. Almost 50% of the workforce is already millennials, and we know for a fact that the longevity in a job is not as long as it used to be. So, in order for the new workforce, even the next generation that's coming in right now, graduating and joining the workforce, they aren't going to stay around if you're continuing to use your paper and pencil and ink, to do your job, and completely ignoring the modern digital tools that are available to your grandmother at home.
Which is it's a very unique thing, right? I mean, as these millennials come in, they have very different value perspectives from our current environment that we're in, right? When we talk about digital transformation, what are we doing? We're trying to be more competitive. What are we doing? We're having less impact on the environment. We're having more sustainability. How can we do more with less? How can we spend less money on energy? How can we help the environment? These are uh, tools in sustainability and programs within your organization that attract talent, because it's very critical that millennials work for organizations that have a forward thinking mindset on how they can impact the environment in a way that is advantageous for the challenges that we face with our, whether it's climate change, whether it's the oceans that are filled with waste, a lot
Yeah.
of the environmental challenges out there. They want to make sure that they're working for companies that are able to address some of the most environmentally challenges that we have out there. So
Mhm.
I think it's a way to really increase your talent base, but also have them attract other talent
Yep.
as well, right? So
Yeah.
it's a way to really feed that pipeline of talent into your organization. So we can't lose sight of that as well.
One of the things about digital literacy and the culture, organization culture, is how do you bring the agile methodology and agile ways of working to the workplace? And it could be adopted to many areas of your business, right? And if your end customer within the organization that is needs to be adapting to change. Let's say you're deploying a digital tool, a soft piece of software, or new technology. Whoever is going to be using that on a day-to-day basis is going to have to go on, undergo some significant, workflow changes in order to adopt that, absorb the information, do things differently, and make an impact. It's important that when an organization is delivering that change, delivering that new technology, it's done in an agile way. Deliver it early, deliver it often, even if it's imperfect. Don't wait for the perfect. Don't wait for perfect to defeat, the good, right? Let them take a look at it. Let them make sure, that they understand it. They are part of your change. They own it. You brought up ownership before. How do you ensure ownership at the user level, at the stakeholder level within the organization that's going through change, right?
That's a very good point, because in in a culture, well, in the past, a lot of people are afraid to fail within organizations because it's not a normal way of running, yeah, an organization. A lot of people will say it's okay to fail,
Yeah.
but in reality, a lot of people are afraid. But with this new agile methodology, it's okay to fail
Yeah.
fast, move
Yeah.
on, keep going, keep testing, keep figuring out what's going to make that move, what's going to make that.
Try not to be
Yeah,
indecisive, right?
exactly.
That's worse.
Yes, that's worse. Absolutely. So, and that's what, helping your organization become more digitally native and data centric will help you make decisions at a much faster pace so that you don't fall into the indecisiveness and paralysis that organizations sometimes fall into. So, yeah, I
Right.
think it's that real movement from I got a sense or I got a feel to no, I'm confident. I can see
Yeah.
this, right? That is how you make an indecisive leader or organization become more decisive, because they have data that's telling them exactly what is happening, right? Giving them that visibility and confidence in making decisions to move organizations into the future, becoming more competitive. That's the key. So
Yeah.
I think we hit a few of those points here, and I think we want to let our audience know that we will get into depth on some of these individually to kind of bring in some insights on that, and a lot to come on that. So
We could try to add some of this in the show notes, but really we hit on a few different things, right? Strategy, vision, pace, communication, adaptability, innovation, customer experience, ownership. We can put some of these in the show notes. And of course, our audience can always check us out at digitaltwinpodcast.com or on YouTube, Facebook, or any of your podcast sites where you get your podcasts.
Absolutely. And again, thanks for joining. Hari and Omar signing off.